Our story starts off with red flag number 1, Queen Marika, and red flag number 2, Radahn, marrying and bringing twins into the world called the Lands in Between. One of the twins, Michaela, wins the cosmic lottery so hard he gets eternal youth. Kids basically got that I woke up like this energy permanently enabled. And then there's Malenia, whose birth certificate might as well have read, "Congratulations, it's a walking tragedy," because while her brother's out there living his best eternal youth life, she gets the scarlet rot, a slow gnawing curse that decided her entire life was going to be a battle with supernatural leprosy. But the scarlet rot isn't just some nasty curse, it's way deeper and darker, tied to a powerful outer god whose whole thing is about decay and rebirth. What makes it so terrifying is that even things that shouldn't be affected, like the inorganic crystallians, still fall victim to its corruption. But Malenia took one look at this divine middle finger and said, "Bet." Instead of starting a support group or writing a sad blog about her condition, she fought in spite of her affliction. She linked up with the Blind Swordsman, a legendary figure who'd apparently thrown hands with the rot god itself and lived to tell the tale, and he did it using a special curved sword blessed by a mystical blue fairy. The fairy was tied to the power of flowing water, which is the natural enemy of rot because water keeps things clean and moving. Something you probably learned in 5th grade. The swordsman passed on his knowledge to Malenia, teaching her how to use the fluid, constant movement of water in her fighting style, which became her iconic waterfowl dance. It was a fighting style that mimicked flowing water, always moving and never letting the rot take hold. So the next time life gives you lemons, turn them into biological weapons and watch as your enemies die a slow, painful, and agonizing death. Anyways, she did all this while being blind. Those prosthetics she's rocking aren't just for show. She's got artificial eyes and an arm because the rot took her real ones. Imagine doing frame-perfect combo moves when you can't even see them. Her personal squad, the Clean Rot Knights, were so impressed by her screw destiny attitude that they willingly exposed themselves to the rot just to fight alongside her. That's the kind of leadership skills they don't teach you in Raya Lucaria, having charisma so high that people volunteer to get fantasy leprosy just to be in your army. Being an Empyrean meant Malenia was essentially drafted into the divine succession plan by the Two Fingers. They're literally just that. Two giant fingers that looked at all the potential god candidates and thought, yes, the rotting one seems like a good choice. To their credit, it's not every day you see a spawn of divine self-crest. Yep, you heard that right. Queen Marika and her king consort Radahn are actually the same person, but also not. Meanwhile, Michaela, being the loving little brother he was, decided that if divine magic wasn't going to fix his sister, then he'd pick something that did. Knitting. Okay, not really, but you can tell me the knitting community wouldn't appreciate cool-looking needles like these. So Michaela abandoned the Golden Order and pursued other means of finding a cure. He then created the unalloyed golden needle that could hold back the rot god's influence, basically a cosmic restraining order. As if the world didn't have enough going on, Queen Marika decides to destroy the Elden Ring. Yes, the very thing the game is named after. Why, you ask? Well, in defiance of the greater will, in grief of her son dying, to deliberately speedrun natural selection, or maybe just for shits and giggles. There's multiple theories on this. Take your pick. This plunges the realm into chaos, and all the demigods start fighting over the pieces like kids with the last pizza roll, but the real showstopper is Malenia versus Radahn. An unstoppable force with a rot problem versus an immovable object who learned gravity magic just to keep riding his hilariously tiny horse. But when things weren't looking too good, as a last-ditch effort, Malenia ended up deliberately snapping the golden unalloyed needle inside her during her fight with Radahn. Because apparently when you're choosing between not spreading supernatural leprosy and winning a fight, the correct choice is always winning a fight. She unleashed her rot powers in what historians now call the most devastating rage quit in gaming history. Because of that, Caelid's now just vibing in its new role as Australia 2.0, where everything's trying to kill you, but now with extra red filter. The whole place looks like someone spilled fruit punch on God's Xbox, and it started corrupting the save file. Even the dogs turned into what would happen if you let T-Rex skip leg day, but never miss jaw day. After the fight, Radahn ended up losing his mind to the rot and became a mindless beast who now spends his days hosting the world's most lethal festival, while still somehow remembering to take care of his horse. Malenia retreats to the Haligtree, carried by one of her loyal soldiers. The Haligtree is basically a bootleg air tree that her brother Michaela grew. But that explanation hardly does it justice, so the air tree is a magical tree that takes your soul after you die, but make it racist. It'll accept some souls, but leave out the rest, so the twins decided to make their own tree, which, unlike the air tree, was meant to be a home for everyone, especially those the air tree had rejected. It was Miquella's way of creating a safe haven for those who didn't fit into the air tree's strict rules. He poured his own blood into it, and I mean that literally, not metaphorically. He hoped to give the outcast a sanctuary, but despite his efforts, the rot still found its way in with mushrooms and decay creeping through the tree. It also really sets up the dynamic between the siblings. Miquella basically symbolizes life and abundance, while Malenia embodies death and decay. And because nothing in the lands between can ever go right, the twins' half-brother Mog from their mom's first marriage showed up and kidnapped Miquella while Malenia was taking her post-Radahn power nap. This is why you don't leave your eternally young demigod brother home alone. Stranger danger applies even to cosmic beings. Or at least that's what Miquella wants you to think. Yup, the kind-hearted twin was actually the evil mastermind all along. It's understandable when you look like this, even if you don't have one, people are going to add a halo to your head, and he's literally called Miquella the Kind. So let's rewind a bit. The battle between Radahn and Miquella wasn't just a conflict between two of the most powerful demigods, it was part of a greater plan. As we now know from the Remembrance lore, Malenia's whispered words to Radahn before blooming into the Scarlet Aeonia were, "Miquella awaits thee, O promised consort." So the devastation of Caelid wasn't just collateral damage, it was a calculated move to ensure Radahn's soul would find its way to the realm of shadow. Meanwhile, Miquella, having charmed Mog into allying with him, Miquella used him to access the Shadow Realm, where he waited for Radahn's soul to arrive. The dark romance lovers out there are going to eat this up, but Miquella needs his own separate video to truly explain what was going on in that big brain of his. The Haligtree, which was supposed to be the sanctuary for the rejected, became Malenia's waiting room. When some random tarnished, walks in thinking they're hot stuff, Malenia wakes up like someone who hasn't had their morning coffee, except instead of being grumpy, she's ready to remind everyone why she's never known defeat. I know what you're thinking, but Caelid wasn't a defeat, it was more of a draw, so technically she's still undefeated. During battle, she triggers her third bloom, turning into a full-fledged goddess of rot, because apparently the universe looked at Malenia and thought, you know what this walking biohazard needs? An upgrade. But of course, because you literally have plot armor, you'll essentially end up killing the woman with supernatural cancer after your 100th try. So how does that feel?